for a moment, I wondered if I just made the biggest mistake of my life, or was it the most important decision for my family's future? It was late on a Friday afternoon in 2022, and there I was negotiating the sale of my coaching company. Josh leaned back and said, "You know that you can make millions more if you hold on to it for just a few more years." And he wasn't wrong. I'd done the math so many times before with my calculator, was probably considering a restraining order on me. But deep down, I knew that I needed to move on. I looked at Josh and I said, "I want to be more, not make more." And as those words stumbled out of my mouth, I realized that I was making a pact with myself to prioritize personal growth over trying to pad out my bank account. Because 5 weeks later, I was there on Zoom saying my goodbyes, getting unceremoniously booted out from all of the tech platforms that I'd built. And then there I was, I found myself really weirdly clicking end call and found myself alone in my Bali office surrounded by a deafening silence. I'd sold my company, I was fully exited, and I'd done it. And it was something I'd wanted to do for so long, something that so many people said that I could not do, and I did it. And for a moment, I wondered if I just made the biggest mistake of my life, or was it the most important decision for my family's future? See, for the past 11 years, my wife Lauren and I had been in the trenches of our parenting our 4 incredible daughters. And let's be perfectly honest, that our marriage had become a little bit more of a less forgotten houseplant. It was still alive, but it desperately was in need of attention and some watering and some tender loving care. The business absolutely consumed me, and whatever was left over went to the kids. And I'm not proud to say that Lauren got the scraps, and she deserved so much more. And so it was time for a new chapter for me, for Lauren, for our family. We craved more time in Australia, less time in the Bali bubble, and professionally, I had the inklings of what I wanted to do next. But I think more importantly, I knew that I needed to show up as a better husband and as a better father. Success in one dimension wasn't cutting it. That doesn't impress me when I see a one-dimensional man. I wanted the full spectrum. As I've always been obsessed with the labels that we slap on ourselves. They shape how we think, how we act, and how we navigate our lives. And with the coaching company sold and our property business providing financial freedom, I found myself labelless and frankly, a little bit lost, which looking back was a good thing. However, who I was without the title, without the grind, that was the question I was really facing. Because out of the blue, a few business owners reached out for a private consultation just after I had sold. They'd heard the whispers about my success and they wanted a bit of a piece of the action. So I was there sitting on a beanbag in my garden, offering advice like some kind of like flip-flop wearing oracle, thinking that I knew all the answers, or at least sharing what I best knew. And Lauren was in the background. She overheard these calls. And when I finished them and I hung up on them, she walked over and said to me, she goes, that's what you should be doing. And I was like, doing what? And she goes, consulting these business owners. You're really good at it and you're energized. And as she said that, I realized I actually was energized. I actually really enjoyed having these consultations. And at first I shrugged it off, like, surely I couldn't just stumble into my career while I was sitting on a beanbag. Plus, I'd promised myself to invest more in my marriage and into my family, but curiosity gnawed at me. So I called the CEOs back and I asked, was it actually helpful? And their responses were mind-blowing. They left that they had gotten 100 times more value than what they had just paid me. And one even joked that I should do this as my next professional chapter. And I think that's all I needed to hear. So for the next year, I clocked over 220 hours consulting 6, 7, and 8-figure business owners. And I knew that I wanted to be one of the world's best. I made the promise to myself, I want to be one of the world's best when it comes to growing coaching businesses. And I knew that I had to put the reps in, and put them in I did, all while making sure that I was home for dinner, bedtime stories, and those enjoyable late night chats with Lauren were never neglected, and I was never going to let that happen again. And as I went through the consulting, I kept meticulous notes from everything, from every call. I was searching for patterns. I was trying to hone my skills. I was developing new ones. I was even charging up to $25,000 a month per client as I stepped into this role of chief revenue officer, as one of them called me. And as I dove into the marketing, the sales, the delivery, the operations, the finance systems, you name it, in all of it, it really turns out that all of the blood, sweat, and all those sleepless nights that I'd poured into building and selling a multi-7-figure business gave me the actual insights, gave me the actual expertise to help these other businesses grow. But the real treasure was actually seeing that my daughters light up when I'd be able to surprise them at picking them up from school, and I was able to be fully present when we're there sitting down for dinner. And I just never wanted to be that lackluster dad again. I knew I had to put my head on my pillow every night, being proud with how I showed up as a husband, as a father, but also being able to be on my mission as well and create the success that my ego was driving me and telling me that I wanted to be able to create. And this is when I really began to realize that success isn't a zero-sum game between work and family. It's a harmonizing, not so much a balancing, a harmonizing that requires constant attention and a willingness to be able to prioritize what truly matters. So when I plunged into consulting for CEOs, I expected it to be like a logical extension of my coaching days. And I was pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised that it was not. It was working with top executives was like coaching on steroids. It was a whole different beast of itself. And the first lesson I really took from it was complexity is overrated. CEOs are inundated with convoluted strategies that make quantum physics look simple. The successful ones cut through the noise. There is no jargon, there is no fluff, there is just actionable steps for them and their team to be able to execute on. Kind of like parenting, where there is no manual, but there's plenty of common sense if you're willing to actually see it. The second big lesson was there is just a lot of decision paralysis, and it's real. I watch leaders absolutely freeze like deer in headlights, terrified of making the wrong decision. Meanwhile, opportunities completely pass them by like ships in the night. And the way that I saw it was actually the harsh truth of it was an imperfect decision executed today beats a perfect decision delayed indefinitely. And it's like deciding whether you need to intervene with like a sibling squabble or just let them sort it out for themselves. Sometimes you just have to act. Because the third lesson was, and this is a big one, there's a big one with what I'm actually using inside of my company today and with my partners' companies, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I know it's cliche, but it's true. And I've seen brilliant strategies crumble under toxic cultures. And because the way that I see it with the company that I now run today is, yes, we are incredibly good at being able to put the right strategies and to be able to know what a coach needs to do to be able to grow their business. But the problem is, if there is not the right culture behind it, it will not get executed the way that it needs to, and success will not come about. And the same goes for families. If the home environment is nurturing, it can weather any storm. And I just started to apply the same insights that I was having with consulting these CEOs at home. Fostering open communication, encouraging each of my daughters to have their unique interests, and making sure that Lauren and I presented a unite front together. I think that was really important. I think that was a huge insight for myself because, and especially last but not least on this one, is your ego is going to be the enemy. The moment that you start believing your own hype and that you are going to be on a slippery slide to absolutely oblivion, because I've sat across from CEOs who couldn't fathom that they might be the problem. And their companies became echo chambers where innovation dies and they wondered why. Because at home, I realized that being dad shouldn't mean that I was always right. Listening, and I really mean truly listening to Lauren and the girls, made me a better father and made me a better husband. And I know conventional wisdom says that leaders should always have the answers and never show their weaknesses. And I just think that's bollocks. Because let me tell you something that was just, this shattered that myth for me in my eyes. Where I was working with a CEO he was just the epitome of traditional leadership. He was decisive, he was unflappable, he was always in control, yet his company was absolutely tanking. And his team, their morale was low, their turnover was super high, and their market share was dwindling. Their revenue was it was on a downward trail. And in that moment of candor where I suggested to him that he really asked his team for his input, he looked at me like I suggested he needed to start juggling flaming torches, because the desperation was edged out with pride and he made the right decision. and where he was able to open up the forum with his team and the floodgates opened for him. His employees, his team members pinpointed bottlenecks and they offered solutions that were incredible, that he did not see, that he did not know how to execute on. And that experience taught me that vulnerability can be a leader's greatest strength. And it really fosters trust and encourages collaboration. Because as a side note with that, admitting that you don't know everything doesn't cause the universe to absolutely implode. Like, I took this lesson home. Being open with Lauren about my fears, about my uncertainties, brought us closer. And I know as a man, we're told, like, don't show your emotion. You've got to be the provider. You've got to be that leader. You've got to be the person that is completely, mountainous and never moved. Yes, that is true, but we're also not perfect. And so we became a team again, Lauren and I, when we were able to do this together, not just being like co-managers of a household. And that's when I realized I didn't want to start another company unless I had a burning desire that I could not ignore. And that venture that just wouldn't just consume me, but it would also be able to align with my commitment to my family. I needed to set this new business, this new company up correctly. And it was something that had to happen in the coaching industry because coaching gets a bad rap these days. And I don't believe that it should. It's an absolute treasure. There's nothing like using your insights and your expertise to profoundly change somebody else's life. But the industry, it's become cluttered. Social media feeds are just flooded with gurus peddling the latest magic pill. An avalanche of outdated or just plain wrong information is on your screens every time you're scrolling. Coaching has started to feel like it's a chore rather than a joy. Instead of cherishing it, coaches were just dealing with it now. But even with all the crap, I know that the magic is still there for coaches. It's just buried under a pile of conflicting ideas. So the $1 million question for coaches really is, what is the single best way for you to get new clients and keep them paying more and for longer? And that's exactly why the Rainmakers was born. And I didn't just want to answer that question. I wanted to actually provide the playbooks, the templates, the funnels, the winning campaigns, you name it. And we are able to do it in a way that doesn't require coaches to sacrifice their lives at the altar of success. Because I've been there and I am absolutely refusing to go back. Because if we get one thing straight, is I barely passed high school. I have no formal training in writing or advertising. I was in special needs classes and I can barely figure out the tech stuff in my business today. And so I'm about as qualified as a penguin in a desert right now. Yet this year, our partner portfolio will sell over $52 million of coaching programs. And I'll personally profit a few million myself. So yes, I know that this stuff works. And I know that I'm actually proud of it, not because the numbers are good, but I've been able to do it all while being a present for my family. Because the way this really came about was it started 6 a.m. in a Bali sauna. I know this sounds a bit weird, but I was doing what us entrepreneurs are told to be able to do for success, right? I was doing sauna and ice baths and the works. And so there was this coach named Simon. We struck up a conversation out of nowhere. He said, I can give $10,000 just to go through your Google Drive. And I was like, my Google Drive? And I asked a little bit kind of like unsure as to what the hell he was going on and a little bit embarrassed, to be perfectly honest. He goes, yeah, I dig through it, treasure hunt, swipe everything that I could. And I was like, why $10,000? And I was genuinely puzzled right now. And he goes, well, one new client is worth $2,500 to me. So if I just get one new client a week from it, it's worth every cent. And he said that as he was walking out of the sauna. And so it got me thinking. So I went back to my MacBook and I started to sift through my entire Google Drive. And he was right. There was an absolute fortune in there. There was all of the winning funnels, the ad campaigns, the emails, the content, the copy, you name it, the stuff I'd accumulated of nearly 20 years of being in a coaching industry and being able to actually build successful businesses with all of my notes and with all of the data that we have today of what is actually working, was the light bulb moment where I was like, you know what? I think we are able to bring together the system and the A-grade team to do all of the heavy lifting for coaches to build their businesses. And so that's why I decided I didn't want clients. I wanted partners. I wanted to genuinely serve and support coaches to have the relationship that was deeper and more intimate, where too many have been burned by business coaches and agencies. And I totally get that. I've done that before. And business coaches and agents are great for some, but they're not great for a lot of others as well. And so the Rainmakers became a marketing and sales firm that works closely with partners to build a sales machine, making their businesses wildly profitable while being able to actually just slash their workload and slash their stress because we're doing the heavy lifting. And I truly believe that because we run a tight ship, I can still make it to my daughter's surf lessons and still be able to have the energy and intention for my wife that she deserves. So today, I'm proud to say that we're doing something unique in the industry, but only because I was wanting to serve my family and what matters most in life first, rather than the business. And I hope this vibes with you. This vibes with you that I think that we're actually like talking the same language and we're wanting to build the same things. Because our expert sales teams closes the deals for our partners. We take the headaches and the work off their shoulders so they can focus on the work they love, both in their business, but also in their personal lives. Because at the end of the day, I don't just want success in one dimension. I want the absolute full technicolor, surround sound version of what success is. And for me, the way that I see it, it's in business, it's in marriage, it's in fatherhood. As I'm not interested in just trying to be this one-hit wonder in what the symphony of life is. I think what I'm really wanting to share with you right now is the belief. I want you to have that knowing inside. And from that knowing, you act and you decide and you do the right things moving forward for you to truly be able to build the life that you want, where you know that you can balance the boardrooms and the bedtime stories. You can have the spreadsheets and the sandcastles. And yes, it's going to be messy and chaotic, but like, would we have it any other way?